question is yet. It's going to come out as I talk. But I spent about 6 years working in the nonprofit after-school world in Boston, and now I work here in Waltham in the public schools. And I'm new to the public schools here, but I'm trying to find ways to bring a lot of the kinds of things that you're talking about, creating a safe space, a sense of community, that sort of thing, to work it more thoroughly into the fabric of the school day. You probably know there was recently legislation passed around bullying in Massachusetts. Yeah. And while it's good that it's becoming more on people's radar screens, the fact that it had to escalate to the level of legislation is troublesome to me. And so I guess my question is either if you have advice for schools or experience working with schools or are amenable to working with schools around the kinds of things that you're talking about. You know, bullying, while it may not be to the same level of violence that you guys are all talking about, there still is sort of the sense of inevitability. People say, oh, this has been happening for years, just like kids be kids. Well, obviously it's a problem. People are committing suicide, people are getting hurt, people are getting arrested. And so, you know, what's to be done on the school level to do what you're talking about, to allow students to recognize the goodness in themselves and to have that be their place of power as opposed to bullying and violence. So I guess just schools in general, if you have any thoughts there.
I have lots of depends. Does the school have lots of money? No. I think very quickly, if I think of in schools, classroom building, this idea of building community in the classroom, it doesn't, you know, I think they sometimes, I guess sometimes schools think, well, we have to bring in an after-school program, when really, if there's commitment from the level of the administration and of the teachers in terms of creating a real feel in that school, then that means in every class there's 5 minutes or 10 minutes devoted to community building. It's much easier to marginalize someone when you don't know them. And it's harder to do that if you know a little bit about that person. Even with adolescents, and kids will always be kids, and sort of all those phrases that are there, it's still harder. I still go back to there's 10% on either end that are committed, you know, but there's what's that 80% in the middle. And so as a school culture, looking at what's happening in the classrooms so that consistently students are getting the message that this is a community feeling, this is a place where there's respect, where there's an understanding of diversity, where there's an exploration of differences, those kinds of things. Not, oh, you know, Miss Jansen's classes where, you know, everyone's all touchy-feely and that sort of a thing. You know, sometimes I think it becomes more of a cult of personality as opposed to a culture of the school. But it takes real commitment from every level to make that happen, and a real focus, you know, moving it to the front. And an understanding that good community building does impact test scores.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think too, you know, our education system in the States is structured, and this isn't how it's implemented, it's how it's structured. And what Marcus was saying about great teachers that can engage students, of course, are an exception, but that it's structured in the sense that if anybody here has read the work of Paulo Freire, who's Brazilian, and talks about pedagogy of the oppressed, that it's a system where the teachers and the adults have the information and give it to students. So we have the answers, and whether it's for tests or whatever subject we're teaching, and we give it to you so it's a very top-down type of system, instead of really looking to students and knowing that the answers already exist within inside of them and having it grow from that. So I think it has to start by flipping, so that it even though we are very youth-focused in a lot of our philosophies in the work that educators do, the practice of it really has to come more from a place of listening and questioning instead of trying to give information to students to regurgitate.
And so then, it's interesting. I was just wondering. I was trying to make a comparison to growing up in Brazil. If there is, I don't remember much bullying happening. And have you seen?
In the favelas, the kids are just tough, because there are two types of kids in favelas. There's the one who are on the street all day, and then the one whose mum who won't let them out, because they know that there's the dealers on the streets and there could be shootouts. But generally they're just tough, but they don't bully each other too much. They're sort of all together.
But they have guns anyways, right?
Yeah, and then there's the thing about the drug traffic is the thing about the drug traffic is they impose an order, like whether you like it or not. I've been working a long time in a favela called Providencia, which is the place where the word favela comes from. It was the first occupied hill in the center of Rio, and the kids there, they're really especially tough. And what a friend who is there says to me, he says his dad was one of the first pioneer traffickers as well. And because when they began, they used to sell drugs in the 60s, they used to sell marijuana. And the reason they started arming themselves was because other people used to come and rob drugs. So that's how it all began. And he said when the traffic arrived, one of the benefits of it was that the violence before used to be random. So someone would have an argument in a bar and they'd kill you. Someone saw you were looking at someone's wife and someone would kill you. And since the traffic, they've sort of took over and now have a monopoly on violence. So if you have a dispute, you take it to them.
Yeah.
And that is a side benefit. It's not what you'd want, but it means that the violence has gone from being random to having a sort of order to it. But bullying, yeah, if someone, if there is a problem, you'll take it to a trafficker at the end of the day, and they have a gun, and people respect that.
Decide, yeah. And it's so interesting also because many times we have this idea of drug lords, right, of being the evil guys, but then they brought, in reality, safety to these communities or not.
Yeah, not safe, a certain form of order, but a good boss is respected in the community. They like a good boss. They like, and you can tell. But there's a law of silence, so people will never criticize a bad boss. But when he dies, they'll start talking. But